Good afternoon. Dear listeners, welcome to AUGA Group Meeting with Investors. I'm Emilia from Nasdaq Vilnius and I'll be moderating today's event. We will start with a presentation from the management, which will be followed by the Q&A session. Please be informed that this webinar is being recorded. As always, I encourage every one of you to ask questions during or after presentation in the Q&A section. With that said, I'm pleased to introduce today's presenter, Chief Financial Officer Mindaugas Ambrasas. Mr. Ambrasas, please, the floor is yours and good luck.
Emilia, thank you for introduction and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. And my name is Mindaugas, and I will go through results of AUGA Group for the first half of the year. As you probably already saw from published reports, overall results of the group for the first half of the year. So in terms of revenue, we were very similar to our sales results last year, 33.9 million euros. In terms of profitability, we have, I would say, quite nice growth. But maybe I just need shortly to explain what is the reason for such quite two different trends in terms of revenue and sales. And I think that's as a result of some specific accounting in agriculture. So agriculture, as you know, is really a very important and big part of our group business. So due to that, our sales are mainly affected by last year's harvest, because in the first half of the year, we're usually selling remaining harvest from the previous season. So as you know, last year's harvest was quite poor. So that's why there is no growth in terms of sales. And if we talk about profitability, so this year we're already showing our expectations, or profitability is based on expectations of this year's harvest. So that's why these two different trends. But as always, maybe let's go and discuss segment by segment, and I will try to provide more details what are the reasons behind all those figures. So as always, let's start with crop growing, which is really the largest and really the most important segment in terms of result, and which really has the largest impact every year. So as I said already, when we talk about results of crop growing segment at the end of second quarter, expectations are still quite a big factor. Because if we talk about the figures, all the calculations are really done based on valuation of situation as we saw the situation at the end of June. And what I will try to do, I'll try maybe to describe in more details how we see this year's harvest, how we saw this year's harvest at the end of the second quarter, and what were the developments in the last months, because really the third quarter is very important in agriculture, and we have huge changes every year in terms of harvest during the quarter. So if we talk about this year harvest, so generally there are three key factors when we want to evaluate what is the forecasted result and forecasted harvest for the year. So we will have additional slide about the prices, but I can say in advance that we don't expect, or we didn't have major changes in recent months in terms of pricing. If we talk about the costs, so of course, due to all the situations which are happening, of course, we had to review forecasts of costs, and we had to increase, and the fact also was that the factual costs and forecasted costs for the year, of course, were increased based on factual situation and our forecasts. So this, of course, had a negative effect on value of biological assets or valuation of the assets. And the most important factor is, of course, yields. I would say we were more optimistic about the yields a couple of months ago. Then expectation was that this year should be, I would say, better than average year in terms of yields. But some of the developments we had in the last couple of months, weather, because we had quite a lot of rain, quite a lot of cold, and this had some negative impact on the yields. So the situation, how we see it today, I would say that we are less optimistic, and the first results from the harvest also show that instead of, as I said, a very good year, I would say that this year we would have average harvest, and the first results from the harvest really prove this expectation to be right. So, of course, we will provide more details, figures about the harvest only after the third quarter, when we have actual figures of the harvest for this season. But to sum up, as I said in the very beginning, third quarter is really the most important quarter in terms of result in agriculture, because things which are happening, they could have huge negative and maybe sometimes positive effect on our harvest. And if you remember, we definitely remember that, and we had this huge loss in valuation of biological assets last year, which led to overall very poor financial year in terms of crop growing segment last year in AUGA Group. So if just to give our expectations for this year, as I said, we saw that the developments in the last couple of months, they had some negative impact. So I would say that we do not expect this continuous growth of gain on the valuation in the second half of the year, the same we had in the first half of the year. But definitely we won't have the same situation we had last year, when we had this huge loss and huge negative changes in recognition of biological assets. Just to elaborate on prices, as always, we are showing the graph of prices of wheat in Lithuania and Germany. And I think all you know that trend, the prices were growing rapidly starting from last year, and this growth continued for, I would say, 6-7 months this year. And recently we had some decrease in prices, first of all in conventional products, but this trend also with some lag is shown in organic products as well. But this, as I said previously, we don't expect that this change will have a substantial effect on our forecasted value of the harvest. First of all, the trend is slightly different for different cultures. For example, here we are showing trend of wheat, but if we talk about pulses, for example, beans, beans, so the trend is slightly different. There is no drop in prices, and the growth of prices continues. And the more important factor for us, that as always, we started contracting harvest in the second quarter. So as for end of August, 76% of forecasted harvest is already contracted. And if you remember from our previous presentations, we have those two types of cultures we are growing. So for some of them, sugar beets is the most clearest example when we have a long-term agreement and long-term cooperation. So the prices and formula for prices is generally fixed. But if to exclude such agreements and just take like normal cultures we are selling in the market, so already 69% of the harvest, future forecasted harvest is already contracted. And in average, if we calculate prices of the harvest we had last year and the prices we are having in our contracts this year, so in average we have 58% higher prices in 2022. So this, as I said, this is a major reason why we are quite optimistic about this year's result in crop growing segment, and even some changes in upcoming months, they won't have a big impact on the result of the segment because big part of the harvest is already contracted. So just to sum up on the results of the segment for first half of the year, so I can say that outlook is quite positive at the moment, but of course, we could calculate final result of the segment after the harvest only. So the third quarter is really the most important for us. In terms of weather for the harvest, it was a quite good season and quite good weather to do the harvest. Unfortunately, some months before that were not the best ones in terms of weather, but nevertheless, you can see that gain on revaluation, it's almost 7 million, so it's quite an improvement comparing to the year ago. And what is also, I think, a big move forward for us, that we have a better result from sales activities. So, first of all, of course, increasing prices also help us with that, but I think that this internal transactions, write-offs, they are in a lower level this year, and that was also focus from the group, which improved the result from the sales and also was one of the factors why overall result for the segment had improved. Dairy, another important segment for us, and I would say we are quite positive about the actual results of the segment as well. But for the start, maybe just two important factors which really affect our results. And here you see the two different stories. So if we talk about milk yields, we for the last, I would say, year, we are quite positive about yield development, and we were telling even in the same investor presentations that we expect this trend to continue. But if you look at this graph, you can say that we had quite poor result in the second quarter because yields fell 4% year on year. But this was, I would say, business decision by the group, because we just made the decision that due to poor harvest last year, we were lacking some of the ingredients. So we had the alternative to buy those ingredients in the market with very high prices, so which could drove our costs substantially just to maintain this high milk yields, or as a little alternative, don't have these ingredients to have lower quality of feed. And we understood that because of that, our yields will suffer. But this is temporary, because after this season's harvest, the components are back to feed menu, and we expect that milk yields should get back to the same level which were in the beginning of the year, of course, depending on seasonality. But generally, this was like logical decision, and we knew what could be consequences of the decision, and we also know how this will get back to the situation we had previously. And the second story is about the prices. So this is yet another reason why, as I said, we are quite optimistic about the results of the segment, because here's the same story. If we talk about prices from, I would say, almost all commodities. So price of raw milk was really growing in the first half of the year. This continued in July as well. So in average, it's 22% growth, but in the recent months, this growth even more substantial. So if you just go to the figures, overall figures of the segment, we already reached, I would say, optimum amount of herd. So we are running in full capacity our production facilities. So growing production volumes, increasing prices, they were the main drivers which really led to profitability of the segment for the 6 months of the year. And then we expect this trend to continue for the second half as well. Mushroom. For almost a year, we were talking about some problems in the segment. And for almost a year, we were talking about the problems in production. If you remember, we had several reasons for decrease in production last year. We had the COVID situation, we had some problems with diseases, high temperature, which led to significant drop in production volumes in the third quarter last year. And we had a quite long way to recover from those problems. So right now we can say that in the second quarter, we are generally on the level which is acceptable. So generally those production challenges we had for almost 12 months are mainly solved. But unfortunately, we have another problem, and I'll get back to that. Just to add to the production, because additional information for those who are following results of AUGA Group and mushroom segment, in the third quarter, we usually have a spike in sales. We have just additional activity in the third quarter, mainly when there is a mushroom forest mushroom season. So we have this activity when we are reselling forest mushrooms. So this have an additional positive effect on our sales and results for the third quarter, but it's still, let's say, additional activity. And of course, production of mushrooms we are doing is the core business, and that's where we are focusing. So as I said, we, I think, solved the problem we had for the last 12 months. Unfortunately, now we are facing a new problem. And I don't think I will surprise anyone, but energy costs, they really hurt us and started to hurt us in the first half, especially in the second half of the year. Energy is quite important for us. Energy and transportation accounts for almost 17% of total costs. Because, for example, we are using cooling during summer in our mushroom production facilities because the temperature should be lower. So, of course, this is really important driver in terms of our profitability. And as you can see from the graph, in the first 6 months of the year, our costs for energy and transportation, they grew by almost 1,900,000 euros to be exact. And this was really a huge problem for us because I would say our expectation was that we will have to work and try to compensate this increasing costs by review of our prices. But unfortunately, looking at our figures for 6 months, we have to say that we were not successful in this task. So average price of the products we sold, it increased only 3% year on year for the 6 months of the year. So, we really didn't reach our target. And we didn't reach the prices, which would be sufficient to at least keep the same profitability we had last year. What happened, because yes, we had quite a few negotiations with our customers, retailers in the Baltics and Scandinavia, and we have increase of prices in our general agreements. But when you look at the final result and final average price of the sales, it depends on several things. It's not only about the price, but it's also about some discounts, about some additional marketing activities. It's also if you're not selling everything in the retail market, but you have to sell at least part in the processing this has a huge effect on your average price. So overall, we were not successful in this task, and that's like the main reason why results of the segment really struggle. So just to move to financial results of the segment, as I said, because of the reasons I mentioned earlier, for the 6 months of the year, we have gross loss of more than 300,000 euros. And of course, this is like an acceptable result for us. And if you just compare result for 6 months to the last year, so this difference, almost 900,000, is really generally the same effect we have in energy and transportation costs. What we are planning to do, and what is the plan how we can change the situation? So in short term, of course, we have to continue with negotiations for price changes. We have to continue working to increase our average sale price, and there is some room there. But if we were more optimistic about this just a quarter ago, so actual results show that this is not an easy task. We also continuing control of energy consumption. Because if we just compare our energy consumption in the mushroom segment year on year, we see that electricity gas consumption has decreased by 24%. So it's really based on some technological things we are doing, organizational things we are doing. But unfortunately, even with such a decrease in consumption, we still have this huge increase in costs. And what is like reason why we expect slightly better results in upcoming seasons. So like the fact that energy consumption is just lower in colder seasons. So this could give some positive effect, of course, but still there is a question what the energy prices will be in general, because now we don't have a fixed agreement for energy costs, so we are still using spot market or market price for that. But we also working on long-term solutions, how to solve the problems we are facing and get the segment back on the profitability. So we are working and looking into possibilities to invest into renewable energy production, which of course will help us save some costs in energy production. And secondly, group is already developing biomethane production projects. So production of biomethane will also give us cheaper energy source. So this could also, mushroom growing segment could also benefit from those projects when they will be completed. So overall, as I said, really unsatisfactory results of the segment, but there are no very clear and solutions how we can change those results around. It really depends on situation in the market, energy market, but we have things to do how we see and we can improve the situation in the short term and in the longer term as well. FMCG, that's also a segment which maybe requires more attention and more comments. Because if you can see from the figures for the 6 months, we had sales of 2.7 million, and this is very modest growth comparing to our sales in 6 months last year, only 5%. So definitely that was not what we planned and expected in terms of growth of sales this year. But we can, I think, already state that due to several reasons, inflation and recession expectations, problems in logistics, our orders from export clients, they are lower from what we expected, and we believe that this year's growth plan will not be met. If you look at the graph, you can see what is the deviation of our sales per quarter. So we already mentioned this last year, but we really see that seasonality of sales is increasing, especially in our export markets. US is the biggest driver there. As we had a really large part of our sales in the third quarter last year, so generally that will be the same story in 2022 as well. So we don't expect like decrease in activities, but if in the beginning of the year we had, I would say, quite ambitious targets in growth, so unfortunately we see that these targets will not be achieved this year. So if we talk about growth, so quite modest one, but not the one we would like to have. Another thing to consider, of course, is decrease in our profitability, and this is quite substantial decrease if we compare our results last year to this year by almost 71%, and we have very similar volumes in terms of business. So increasing costs, that was also the main driver for that change. But in this segment, I would say we are more optimistic comparing to our mushroom growing segment. As big part of our sales are quite seasonal. If we talk about our sales to US markets, maybe partly Japan, so you're generally doing sales or doing contracts once a year. So of course, in this situation, reviewing of prices, it's not like fast thing to do, and it really took time before the pricing was reviewed and increased in order to compensate those growing costs. So we believe that we will already see increase in prices and definitely increase in profitability in the third quarter this year, and the sales we already doing to US market, they are in substantially higher price level comparing to the same sales to the same customers we did this year. So that's why, as I said, I believe that situation is really better if we compare to situation in our mushroom growing segment. We see a realistic possibility to increase the prices and at least to get back at least partly to the same profitability level we were last year. Another important reason why we will not meet our growth, let's say, target, and why we don't have this growth in sales this year, unfortunately, we are missing some of our FMCG products. So you can see from the slide that our flour and dairy products are generally missing for the full year, and you couldn't find those products in the shops in Lithuania and Baltics. We have some problems with our partners, the companies we outsource production of those products, and we don't expect that these products will be back to the sales soon. And this is quite important because, for example, dairy products, they accounted for almost 9% of FMCG sales in the first quarter of 2021. So now we're generally missing this part of our product portfolio. And of course, this is also quite the important reason and big reason why there is no growth in sales. So if we look at product category we have in sales, so we have a little bit higher growth than you saw in overall figures. But part of missing products leads to a situation that overall growth is really modest. So what we are planning to do here, the group is really working on relaunching even broader dairy product basket, but we will provide more information to investors and to the market and we will have more details about the timeline, about the product range, about the partners, etc. But this is in I would say quite near future plans. So and this is where quite a big focus of AUGA Group is on today. So just to sum up activities of our segments. So here is just visual presentation where the deviation of EBITDA is coming from in terms of our business segments. So, we have a positive development in crop growing segment. We also have positive development in dairy. Unfortunately, mushrooms and FMCG are not performing that well. It's not only behind what we planned, but also behind results we had last year. And some other important information. We were saying this for several presentations already, that we believe that 2022 will be very important for AUGA Group. Not only that we want to improve our results and financial results and get back from this very poor result we had last year, but also this year will be very important for us because we are trying to implement several important technological projects which could be very important for future of AUGA Group and our strategy implementation. So just a short update on the situation of those projects and what are like our plans right now. If you remember, the first project is biomethane infrastructure, and the group was planning in the beginning of the year that we will have 3 facilities producing biomethane by the end of the year. So due to problems in supply chain logistic, we still developing this project. We still building those facilities, but we just believe that some of them will be slightly behind the schedule. So currently we are quite optimistic that at least one of the units will operate by the end of the year. And I think the plan for remaining 2 is really very end of the year and or beginning of the next year. So the plan is still there that those 3 facilities will be operating with slight delay in time frame. Specialized feed technology. This technology was in the testing phase, and this testing phase continues. First tests we did, they showed some promising results, but I would say we are still working on technology itself. So no major news in this project. And regarding AUGA tractor, as we said in the very beginning of the year, the plan was to build the first batch and assemble the first batch of the tractors by the end of the year, by 4th quarter. So the same problems with logistic, with supply of some spare parts, they create some challenges. So what we are doing right now, I think we are focusing on smaller batch. So generally the plan is to have 3 tractors running and working in our fields by the end of the year, because this really, we want to make sure that technology works and our cooperation with assembling partner works, that we are able to assemble all spare parts required and we have technology in place. So, it's more important to have smaller batch working instead of trying to build a bigger batch, but this will require more time. So once again, the project runs according to the plan with some delay in time. Another important just maybe news to share that I think some of you know that AUGA Group was one of the few companies which introduced stock option program for employees 3 years ago. So this year was the first year when employees got actual shares. So after 3 years from initial agreement, it was the realization of those stock options for employees. So a little bit more than 2 million shares were distributed to almost 170 current and former employees, and this amounted to almost 1% of current equity. So this, had very small change on shareholder structures. In a longer period, we really believe that we will have shareholder structure with employees, which are really motivated for the company to succeed and will increase liquidity of the shares in the longer perspective. But maybe in a shorter perspective, of course, it put some pressure on the pricing of shares as well. And as always, just information about our share performance, where you can find all information, financial results, figures in Excel format, and the disclaimer. And I think that's it from my side, and I would be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much for the comprehensive presentation. And indeed, we're moving to the Q&A part. But before the beginning, I would like to remind all the attendees that you are very welcome to send in your questions in the Q&A box of your screen. And you can send them in also anonymously. So the first question would be as following. Where are the biggest bottlenecks for the company going forward? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's really very good and very difficult question to answer, because there are, I think, lots of things we need to change and improve. If we talk about our daily business, I still believe that we have potential to improve. I'm not even talking about mushroom segment, but we still see huge potential in FMCG sales. We still believe that there is potential to improve our dairy results. Crop growing, it really depends year on year on the season, so it's maybe difficult to comment on that. But the most important thing right now for the group is, I would say, that there is this success of those projects we are currently developing. Because we believe that these projects, they are really important for our future. And if we could prove that they are working in smaller batches in AUGA fields, so it's just a matter how to find the ways how to expand them, how to commercialize. Just to be more specific, if you have those 3 tractors running, so we will have possibility not only to have this production in AUGA Group, but we also have savings in terms of fossil fuel consumptions. So this is really important, just to find a way how not only to have like 3 or 5 tractors working in the fields, but how we can really expand this operations, and how we can structure, organize, and maybe to change all the tractors which are operated in AUGA Group, and how we can share this technology and knowledge to other farmers in Lithuania and other markets as well. So I think successful development of the projects we are currently doing, and even more importantly, finding way how to commercialize if they are successful, that's the biggest bottleneck for AUGA Group for today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for your answer. The next question would be as following. Why has growth in FMCG segment stopped?
Mm-hmm. I think the question was answered during the presentation. So generally, we can say that we had decrease in sales because some of the products were missing, but we also didn't have the growth we wanted to have and expected to have, just because of consumer and retailer opinion about the future. If there is an expectation about recession, an expectation about inflation, so of course orders are slightly lower than we expected and planned.
Thank you very much. Let's move on. And the next question would be, what should change that mushroom segment would return into profit?
Thank you. I think another question, and we also touched it during the presentation. So just to sum up, in terms of the problem we had last year, production, I believe that we are already on the level which is okay. Now we have two major areas which need to be improved, or we need to find a solution how to change that. So first of all is pricing. So I don't, would be very optimistic that it will be easy to change pricing in retail shelves. I would say that we need to work more on our product portfolio. So generally, as I mentioned, there is a huge difference in pricing if we sell everything as a fresh product in retail and if we sell the product for processing. So, if we can optimize our product portfolio, we can achieve better profitability and better average price. So that's the focus for us. And secondly, of course, we need to find the solution how to at least somehow control effect of energy price increase, because this side of business it's really difficult to control. Of course, we could have long-term contract a year ago, and we would be quite lucky with the decision. But unfortunately, the contract we had it ended at the very end of last year, and we had this huge increase in prices, very rapid. So, we didn't manage to fix the price in, let's say, acceptable level. And now we have this dependence and this negative effect. But as I said, renewable energy is one alternative. Biomethane we are producing is a second option. How at least we can control the costs and in that way help our mushroom growing business to improve the result.
Thank you for your comprehensive answer. Let's move on. And another attendee is asking how much increasing interest rates is expected to increase finance cost in the next 3 years?
It's difficult to answer the question without knowing what will be interest rates for the next 3 years. But we have, depending on the season and depending on our trading lines, we have almost 35 to 40 million euros of loan portfolio from the banks with floating interest rate. So, one increase by 1%, it increase our cost by 300,000 to 400,000 euros per year. So, of course, this is important and big cost line, and this is the thing to consider in the future.
Thank you. Could you please comment on what is the quality of this season's crops?
Overall, as I said during the presentation, so if we talk about the harvest in total, so yes, expectation of total harvest had decreased slightly. So we would expect yields would be, let's say, average. But if the question is about the quality of crops itself, so yes, though in the market we could hear some opinions that quality of crops is quite poor in conventional farming, I would say from the harvest we already having that we see that quality is not that bad. So generally we don't have a situation we had in, I think, 2020 when yields were quite okay, but quality at least of wheat was very poor. So big part of the wheat was feed quality and resulted in lower selling price. So that's not the case for the year. We are quite happy with the quality of harvest we have for this year, at least from the first cultures we harvested.
Thank you. Let's move on. And another question would be, why is the total area of cultivated land decreasing year by year? For instance, 2022 as compared to 2021 and 2020. What is your strategy in changing the area of land in the future?
Thank you for the question. The total area of cultivated land, it really changes year to year. Because if you remember, only part of the land we are cultivating we own, I think around 11%, and the rest is rented, leased from unrelated parties. So generally, we have this change every year, but some of land is we just had our agreement run out, and maybe we decided not to continue. Maybe they found another company or person to use the land. So I would say this is like a natural process. To be more specific on the situation this year, so yes, we didn't prolong rent of some land plots where we are not that successful in cultivating our business. So we decided, because it was like located further from our bases, so we decided not to continue our operations there, and maybe to focus in areas where we are more successful. So there is no like strategy changes. We still continue as we do today. This decrease, it was just related to the fact that some of the agreements we have, they ran out, and then we didn't prolong them.
Thank you for your answer. We're still receiving quite a few questions, so let's continue. What is the overall situation with your debt, and do you experience any problems? Thank you.
Okay. If the second part about the problems is only about the debt, so no, we don't experience problems with our creditors at the moment. Maybe to elaborate on that, when we had really poor results last year, we really had lots of discussions with our creditors. And I really just using this opportunity also even could maybe thank them for the support and understanding, because from all of them we really got waivers because we breached some financial covenants. We got some additional support if needed. If you remember, in the beginning of the year we even signed some additional financing agreements. So I think overall situation is that everyone understands that our ratios will change after the third quarter only, because if you calculate the results, if you calculate the covenants, usually calculate for like rolling 12 months, and as we had very poor third quarter last year, so we will have full picture only after third quarter this year. So they of course are waiting for our results. We of course are waiting for our results. But as I said in the presentation, we believe that our results will definitely improve this year. So situation will be much better than we were like last year. So of course, if we manage to find a solution with our creditors in a very poor situation last year, so I definitely believe that we will continue our cooperation when the situation will improve.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Are there any plans to improve performance of the most important segment of the group, meaning crops segment?
I don't think I fully understand the question. There are always plans to improve the performance, because I don't think we are satisfied with existing results, and we believe that that's the maximum what we can achieve. There are some technological things, some of the things we are, as I said, in the testing phase, but there is no obvious solution in agriculture or some very specific projects we need to implement in order to automatically achieve better results. But of course, I think this is the segment where we believe results could be better. We are working on that, and hopefully we could achieve that.
Thank you for your answer. Let's continue. Why is it so hard to raise prices for the mushroom segment? Do not all growers face the same cost increase? Are some selling at loss, or do international competitors have a cost advantage?
I think the problem in the price increase in the segment is really competition. First of all, it's not always easy to increase the price with the retailers. Our almost majority of our customers are the largest retailers in the Baltics and Scandinavia. So I don't think they are the ones who really like increasing prices for the consumers. But of course, I think the situation is changing. But more importantly for us, we really face competition from Polish producers. And we believe that Polish producers in some areas, they have a competitive advantage due to lowering value of Polish zlotys. You could say that energy cost should be similar, but there are some state support mechanisms in Poland we are missing here in Lithuania. So generally, they have some competitive advantages comparing to us, and that is the reason why it's not that easy to increase the prices in our export markets.
Thank you for your answer. How would biomethane be used to improve AUGA Group's financial position?
I will not provide specific numbers, but the biomethane production facilities, they will be able to produce the amount of biogas which should be enough for all our internal consumption if we talk about fully using our biogas tractor in our daily activities. So of course, today, if we're planning to build 3 tractors, so we will have, additional biogas to sell, and having in mind current energy prices, this should be quite a good business case, just standalone as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I see that we have 2 more questions remaining. So if you as attendee have an additional question, please send it in now. And the next question would be, would it be possible to get a rough estimate of the investments for the full year 2022?
I think I will not present a specific number, but what I could comment that, of course, after very poor financial results last year, our possibilities to invest were quite limited. So definitely the investments this year will be lower we had in 2021. Because all the projects we had to start in the spring in order to finish them by the end of the year, and the same goes to next year projects. If we will start and finance them after the harvest is done, so we will have only very small or the first steps in the project implemented. So it will not be shown in our. It will have very small effect on our financial reports. So overall, investment amount will be really lower than we had last year. But I think the most important thing what we did, we really try to find all required resources to those most important projects which are related to our strategy and new technologies, and those projects had financing which is needed at least to have this minimal implementation ready by the end of the year. So yeah, maybe we are slightly late with some of them, but that was the main target, and I think we were able to achieve that.
Thank you for your answer. And it seems that the last question for today will be, when do you expect that biomethane initiatives, plants, and tractors will start to have a material positive effect on the financial results of the group? For instance, would 10 tractors fleet planned for Q4 make a significant cost reduction or not?
If we are planning to have tractor and biomethane facilities starting to operate from the first, let's say, quarter next year. Okay, you can have those tractors working in the last quarter, but if you have like full impact, so you could say first quarter next year. In terms of our agricultural activities, of course, the first quarter, you do very limited number of works. So in terms of tractors, there will be not a significant effect. But if you are producing biogas, but of course, we have to consider that technologically it takes 1-2 months to start producing biomethane from the facilities. So generally, still, the first quarter will have the first effect, but the full effect we will see on the second quarter next year. Because if we have tractors and we start using them, we can easily change some of the tractors. For example, we are currently renting every year. So, this will have a very clear and rapid effect on financial results and the situation.
Thank you very much. As all the questions are answered, on behalf of AUGA Group and Nasdaq Vilnius, thank you everyone for joining us today. The recording, as always, will be available in the Nasdaq Baltic YouTube channel. Have a good day, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.